Even good things have to come to an end. Such is the way of life. And no matter how much fun you might be having with your friends in the summer sun, the time will come to say goodnight and goodbye. And in many instances, though, it's actually when to call it a night that dictates how fondly these things are looked back upon. After all, wouldn't you rather be waking up the next day buzzing with stories about what you got up to, or still be awake trying to force a moment that has long gone? In fact, I know when to end a good thing, so you know what? I've been Jules, you've been awesome, never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye. Oh, who am I kidding? I wouldn't deprive you all of my dulcet tones, but I will be talking about video games that didn't know when to call it quits and thus ended up putting on a slightly sour note on otherwise great experiences. So pull up a seat and let's get comfy and talk about some long old tales, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video games that didn't know how to end. Number 10, Bioshock. We kick off this list by talking about one of my favourite games, and say it with me kids, of all time, Bioshock. Honestly, I think this game is as close to perfect as it gets. Well, for me, at least anyway. However, even I will admit that there are basically two endings to this game. One in which you reach Andrew Ryan and undo everything that Rapture is, was, and ever could be, and then there's the tacked-on shooter slog that is the confrontation with Frank Fontaine. Once Andrew Ryan dies, Frank Fontaine becomes the real final villain. And unlike the former, the latter is not nearly as interesting, even less so when he comes to just be a generic superpowered idiot who needs to take a breather every 5 minutes. It feels like a push towards a boss that is forced, like the studio put pressure on the devs to include something that had the typical shooter-style ending, fearing that the actual conclusion between Ryan and his babby boy just wasn't enough. Now true, it does tie up a plot thread, but seriously, what did Fontaine actually win through this? The city is a leaking mess, the population are dead or mutated beyond reason, and there is nothing left to save. Let him have the wreck. I mean, sure, it would have been a downer ending, but it would have furthered the commentary of the game about its messages on the pursuit of power at any cost. Fontaine wins, but Fontaine loses, and you die. Now that would have been a good ending. Number 9, LA Noire. LA Noire starts out with an engagingly simple premise, placing you in the role of Cole Phelps at the beginning of his career in law enforcement. As Cole successfully solves more and more crimes, he continually gets promoted until he becomes a full-fledged homicide investigator, where he's forced into the darker aspects of humanity. It's pretty much classic noir storytelling, and it is where LA Noire excels the most. But at some point in the story, though, things take a significant turn into a grand conspiracy involving real estate for veterans, which dips into Cole's past during World War II. Gone are the dark alleyways and shadowy murders, and replaced instead with something much bigger, but arguably less compelling. As the story begins to grow, Cole's personal tale takes a backseat, even to the extent that when he begins his affair, we actually have no say on the matter, and it feels like it came out of nowhere. In fact, it seems like it was only done so that more people could be sad at his rather shocking death. LA Noire even resorts to changing character perspectives partway through in order to add more hours to the story, which ruins the pacing and detaches you from what you actually care about. It's not an awful story by any stretch, but it feels very padded towards the end and could have left players with a sweeter experience if it was just a little shorter. Number 8, Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. Mario and Luigi's second adventure on the DS has them adventuring through time to save Princess Peach. I mean, what a surprise, right? This time from the nefarious Princess Shroob. In the end, the Mario brothers finally confront her for a final battle, upon which she is defeated. Oh, again, what a surprise, right? But hang on, what do you mean that that's not the actual end? Well, first baby Bowser completes the Cobalt Star, which releases elder Princess Shroob. You fight her not once but twice, her second form taking even longer to defeat, and just when you think it's finally over and everything is returning back to normal, she appears again to possess Bowser in the present timeline for one final fight. Jesus, I've had stalkers with less commitment than this. Plus, the elder Princess Shroob is a great example of a villain that just won't stay down, and her battle drags on for way too long, to the point in fact that when you find another one of her forms pop up, you find your finger hovering over that power button, and surprisingly, that is not an experience that many players enjoy. Number 7, Yggdra Union will never fight alone. I'm sorry, what is this name? Yggdra Union, or however it's pronounced? Well, whatever it is the second episode of the Department Heaven series and tells the story of Yggdra, the princess of Fantasynia, as she attempts to reclaim her kingdom from the invading Bronchian Empire. Right, I'm just going to stop here. As you can tell, I've not played this game, but what is with these names? It's like somebody's Googled medieval gubbins portmanteaus. I hate it! Anyway, the game concludes with the defeat of Gulkassa, Jesus, the leader of the Bronchian Empire. Or should I say, that's where the story at least concludes, because the game decides to carry on despite not having any narrative weight behind it. Suddenly, Noire, a character who was thought to be dead, appears and reveals that he is the mastermind behind everything. Noire becomes the new big bad, and you're forced to face him in a battle that extends way past what would have been a logical closing point. This type of revelation is a lazy trope that so many RPG games try to get away with, and rarely does it work. Plus, it's kind of a shame because after reading about this game, Noire actually seems to be a fairly interesting character, but is relegated to a plug-in boss battle. Number 6. Chrono Cross. Now, here's a game that I want to eat with a spoon and lick the plate after, as Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger are masterful examples of how to do RPGs right. However, and this might get a bit of hate, the ending to Chrono Cross does drag out a bit. In fact, you could argue that the entire second disc is little more than bigger, badder bosses arriving and proclaiming themselves to be the real final end boss. For example, much of the game is about a powerful supercomputer named Fate being the main antagonist. However, this is only the beginning, and its defeat only makes way for an even greater threat, the Dragon God, emerging of 6 elemental dragons that threatens the entire world. Finally, just after you defeat the Dragon God, yet another massive threat sprouts up in the form of the Time Devourer, and at this stage you wonder just where all this insanity will end. Now, don't get me wrong, the pacing of these mini-arcs is pretty good, but it kind of feels like the end of The Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? Cool, we get it, you won, just stop jumping on the bed, you hairy-footed Burks, and get on the bloody boat already. Number 5. Doom 3. Now, this entry is slightly different to the others because Doom 3's closing act is actually really fun, but the story kind of dries up around the middle of the game. And there seems to be a really simple fix to all of this. I mean, just flip them round and have the descent into literal hell that happens midway through happen at the end. The goal to receive the Soul Cube feels like it's the main narrative thrust, and so getting that early doors means that Doom 3 feels a bit aimless for a long old while. Plus, when you think about Doom, you pretty much always think of images of hell. It's almost like the entire marketing is built around it, so why would you blow your BFG-sized load this early and then have us going back to Mars? That's like your mum insisting that we shoot the dialogue scenes after what we've witnessed her do with that cheese stringer car battery and that crotchless thong. We've had the money shot, so why tease the tip now? Doom should not have been so keen to go straight to hell because it meant that the closing sections felt lost in limbo. And also, that is my one per list. Number 4. Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3. Let's give it up for the bloody amazing Persona series, which manages to be one of my favourite RPG franchises and high school simulators all at once. Now, the events of Persona 3 take place over a year as you attend school, but there's an after-class club that sees you using your personas to combat a horrible group of mind-eating foes called Shadows. It creates for an interesting dynamic where you go from developing relationships and getting homework in on time to battling demons within the Tartarus. It's exciting, it's different, and for some reason the plot grinds to an absolute halt. For 2 in-game months, there's a distinct lack of anything to do other than maintain your relationships with the other characters, as the story just seems to meander in a superfluous direction. It feels like the game is stalling for time before reaching its climax. Now, I know that there's meant to be more of a focus on relationships here, but the fun of the game is picking and choosing how you spend your time. Therefore, this feels very forced, and when the game finally remembers it's got a plot, it kickstarts things back in such a way that it feels jarring. I guess if you were defending this, you'd say it was like a filler arc on an anime, but come on, when has that ever been a good thing? Number 3. Hack/GU Volume 3 Redemption. There's a moment in Redemption, the third and final chapter of the Hack/GU series, where everything feels like it's coming to a close. Owen uses his avatar to reset the world, waking up the comatose players while sacrificing himself in the process. It's character-driven, bittersweet, and would have made for a truly satisfying ending. But then Yatta reveals that Cubia, a major antagonist from the previous series of Hack games, is back and threatening to destroy the world. This leads to hours of more gameplay that feels tacked on and detached from the main plot that preceded it. Now, it's a great idea in principle to have a callback to a previous villain, but the implementation felt like this was a DLC campaign that was just simply stapled on. Redemption is one of the clearest cases you can find of a game that didn't know when to stop. Its final hours come at the expense of the narrative, damaging it and detracting from a moment that would have served as a fine ending. In fact, by the time that it actually finishes, you'll likely only remember these uninspired final hours, and that's a real shame. Number 2. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Oh no, I'm about to annoy a lot of people, I know. However, I think I am justified, and I will try to clarify in this example that I am talking about the arduous fetch quest that was the Triforce Collection quest that happens late in the game. And lest we not forget that this was a section of the game that even the devs went on record to apologise for, and so it was not like the game was perfect even by the creators' standards. In fact, the HD remaster of the game shortened the time of this section to be a better experience for the player, so yes, while I might have sounded unsure at the start of this entry, by heck I think I am right with this choice. Now the problem with this quest is that it comes at the tail end of the game, and the sheer length of time it takes to complete it drags the ending momentum to a complete screeching halt. Not only do you have to find the shards, but before you can locate them you have to find the Triforce charts. That's a lot of fetching to be doing at a time when the story should be escalating to its conclusion. Had the Triforce shard quest been integrated into the narrative earlier and spaced out more, this wouldn't have been a problem. And rumours even circulate to this day that this quest was only put in because of production issues and was done so in a rush to get the game ready for a release window. So there you have it. Please don't kill me. And number 1, Batman Arkham Knight. Oh, Arkham Knight, you could have been the best thing since sliced bread, but instead you just covered yourself in butter and slid up and down the scale when it came to player enjoyment. In some areas, this title was truly breathtaking. In others, it was pure guano, my brothers. And the negatives really came down to how this game approached its ending, or should I say endings, because if you wanted to unlock the true ending, you needed to collect an abysmally large amount of Riddler trophies. In the first game, it was fun. In the second game, it was challenging. But here, well, it meant more time in the Batmobile, and I hated how much I ended up resenting this vehicle towards the end of the playtime. This wouldn't have been so bad had the game actually chosen to end with the proper ending and given us, I don't know, like another bonus for the Riddler trophies, but by tying a collectible to the close of the game, it just felt like needless padding. Plus, to even get to this final act, the amount of tank battles was ludicrous and a clear sign of the developers gatekeeping the player from getting through the story at a reasonable pace. Taking these moments out, or just even lessening the amount of times that they show up, would have meant a decently paced game. However, what we got was a bit of a bat flop. And there we go, those were 10 video games that didn't know how to end. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends, and let me know down in the comment section below what else you would have picked for this list. But before you go and hopefully have a great day, I want to end this list on how games didn't know how to end things by talking about the inverse, about how to start something. I know I speak a lot at the end of these videos about reaching out for assistance with your mental health if you are struggling, but I just want to say I recognize how difficult it is sometimes to start that conversation. It takes a great deal of effort if any of your friends are approaching you to talk about their mental health, so please try and give them the time of day. And if you're struggling to start this conversation yourself, then remember there are support professionals out there who are literally trained to help open this dialogue. And I know that the road to recovery is not easy either, but hopefully this will put you in the right direction. Now go out there and absolutely smash it. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.